Part 1 Hook. The day I chose me, there are days you never forget. Not because something terrible happened, not because someone died, but because you finally lived. I was 67 years old when I packed one suitcase, folded my wedding ring into a tissue, and walked out of the house I had lived in for over 4 decades. No screaming, no tears, just silence, and a breath I hadn't allowed myself in years. After 40 years of marriage, why now? That's the question everyone kept asking. But what they didn't understand is that some marriages don't end with a dramatic affair or a broken plate or a slammed door. Some marriages die quietly, over time, while the world keeps clapping for your anniversary photos. And one day you realize you've disappeared from your own life. What I did next wasn't planned. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rebellion. It was something more radical. It was choosing myself for the very first time. Part 2, the 40 years I pretended everything was fine. I met Tom when I was 23. He was charming in the way men were back then, confident, clean-cut, the kind of man who opened doors and expected you to thank him for it. He didn't ask about my dreams, he told me his, and I thought that was love. Back then, a good wife didn't ask for too much. She smiled at dinner parties. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny. She raised the kids, made the holidays magical, and stayed quiet when her needs were inconvenient. And so I did. I folded myself into the corners of our home. I decorated his life with my silence. And every year that passed, I convinced myself that contentment was the same as happiness. "You're so lucky," people would say. "He's never cheated, never hit you. You should be grateful." Grateful, as if not being abused was the bar for joy. But they didn't see the tiny deaths, the way my opinions were dismissed, the way I was always the one to bend, the way love over time became obligation wrapped in routine. I don't think Tom ever meant to make me feel small. But the truth is, he never stopped to check if I was disappearing. And I never told him, because I had been taught a quiet wife is a good wife. So I smiled. For 40 years, I smiled, until the smile began to hurt more than the truth. Part 3, the moment everything changed. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't an affair. It was a dinner, a normal Tuesday night. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, the same routine. Tom was scrolling through his phone, grunting at the news. I asked him what he wanted to do for our 40th anniversary. He didn't look up. "I don't know. Whatever you want, you always figure it out." And just like that, something inside me cracked. 40 years, and I was still the one figuring it out. The one planning. The one holding the pieces while he existed. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, not to check my reflection, but to ask a question I hadn't asked in decades. Do I even know who I am without him? I didn't. And that terrified me. Because if you've spent your whole life orbiting around someone else's needs, the moment you step away feels like free fall. But also, for the first time in years, I felt the faintest tug of something else, a curiosity. What if there was more? What if I wasn't done? What if the second act of my life could begin at 67? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark with my hands folded in my lap, and I made a promise to myself. Before I die, I want to live at least 1 year that's fully mine. Just 1 year with no compromise, no guilt, no quiet swallowing of pain. Just me. Part 4, the goodbye he never saw coming. I didn't leave with a dramatic speech. I didn't throw dishes or demand an apology. I didn't even cry. I just woke up before the sun. The house was still, wrapped in the kind of silence that once felt like comfort, but now felt like a cage. I packed one suitcase, a few clothes, my mother's old cookbook, a photo of my kids when they were little back when they still needed me, and my journal. That was it. A lifetime boiled down to 23 pounds. I didn't leave a note. What do you say after 40 years of being unheard? Instead, I made the bed, folded my robe, and walked out the front door as the sky turned the soft color of forgiveness. Tom called later that afternoon. 6 missed calls, 1 voicemail. Where are you? Are you okay? What's going on? I didn't answer, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because, for once, I wasn't going to explain my absence to the man who never noticed my presence. I checked into a small seaside inn, the kind with chipped paint and the scent of old books and ocean salt. The woman at the desk smiled kindly. "Checking in for how long?" she asked. I paused, then I said, "I don't know yet. Maybe until I remember how to be myself again." And she nodded, as if she knew exactly what that meant. For the first time in 4 decades, I ate dinner alone and enjoyed it. No questions about salt or portion size or why I was quiet. Just the sound of waves and my own breathing, uninterrupted, unapologetic. Part 5, everyone thought I'd lost my mind, but I was finding my soul. The phone didn't stop ringing for days. My daughter, my son, friends from church, even my sister. "What are you doing? Are you okay? Have you lost your mind? After all these years, now you walk away?" And I understood. To them, I was the stable one, the rock, the woman who showed up, who kept things together, the good wife, the devoted mother, the reliable friend. But not one of them asked me the most important question: "Are you happy?" Truth is, I didn't know how to answer that yet, but I knew I was breathing differently. Deeper, slower, more like a woman no longer waiting for permission to exist. I started small. I went to a bookstore and bought a novel that wasn't on a book club list. I walked along the beach barefoot without checking the time. I sat at cafes and watched the world without having to perform in it, and every night I wrote. Pages filled with things I had never dared to say out loud. Things like, "I miss who I used to be before I became everything for everyone else." I didn't leave because I stopped loving. I left because I stopped disappearing. The innkeeper, a woman named Ellie in her 70s, said something to me one morning over coffee. "You don't look lost," she said. "You look like someone finally figuring out the difference between being alone and being free." And for the first time in my life, I smiled without hesitation. Because she was right. I wasn't unraveling, I was becoming. Part 6, the day he showed up at my door, it had been 6 weeks. 6 weeks since I walked out. 6 weeks since I'd last heard his voice. Then, one evening, just as the sky dipped into that soft orange of a tired sun, there was a knock on the door of my small seaside room. I opened it, and there he was. Tom. Older than I remembered, or maybe, for the first time, I was seeing the years I'd ignored etched into his face. He didn't look angry or broken, he just looked confused. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "We had a good life, you never said anything was wrong." I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I answered, calm and clear, "I did say something, you just weren't listening." He shifted uncomfortably. "I never hurt you, I never cheated, I worked hard. I provided," I nodded. "You did, you were never cruel, just absent." I gestured for him to sit. He didn't. He looked around the tiny room like it was a crime scene. "This is what you left for? This tiny place, this lonely life?" I smiled, not with mockery, but with the soft certainty of someone who no longer needs approval. "This tiny place is where I heard my own thoughts again, where I could breathe without guilt, where I didn't have to shrink to keep the peace." He stood there, eyes wet now, maybe with regret, maybe just confusion. "So what now?" he asked, and I told him the truth that had taken 40 years to find. "Now I learn how to love myself, and if you ever want to truly know me, the real me, not the version you built around your comfort, then maybe we can talk again, but not until then." He didn't answer. He just nodded slowly and walked away. I closed the door gently. No slam, no relief, just stillness. And within that stillness, a new kind of strength. Part 7, I'm not starting over. I'm starting forward. People talk about starting over like it's something tragic. Like you lost the game and now you have to play from the beginning. But I wasn't starting over. I was starting forward with every scar, every lesson, every version of myself that had been silenced, now awakened. I didn't dye my hair. I didn't buy a red convertible. I didn't move to Paris or sign up for salsa classes. What I did was quieter, deeper. I learned how to cook for one, not as an act of loneliness, but of care. I bought a plant, and for once it lived, because now I had time to water it. I reread my old journals, and I cried. Not for the life I left behind, but for the girl who kept trying to be enough for people who never saw how much she was already carrying. Some days were hard. Mornings when I missed the sound of someone else in the house. Nights when the silence echoed a little too loud. Moments when doubt knocked on my chest like an old familiar guest. But then I'd take a walk by the sea, feel the salt on my skin, and remember, this isn't the ending. This is the chapter where I finally write the story in my own voice. I started teaching a memoir class at the local library. Women showed up, gray-haired, wrinkled, tired, curious. And when they wrote, the room filled with decades of unspoken truths. One woman, Maria, hugged me after class and whispered, "You made me believe it's not too late, that maybe there's still time to choose myself." I smiled. "There is," I said. "There always is. If you're still breathing, there's still time to come home to yourself." Part 8, the letter I wrote but never sent. It was raining the day I wrote it. Not the kind of rain that screams, the kind that taps gently, like a memory returning. I sat by the window of my small room, pen in hand, paper trembling slightly beneath it. I wasn't writing to be heard. I was writing to be free. "Dear Tom, you probably won't understand this. You might think I've lost something, but in truth, I finally found what I had buried for decades, myself. I spent 40 years choosing peace over honesty, choosing comfort over truth, choosing you over me, and I don't blame you entirely. You were just being who you always were. It's me who forgot who I was supposed to be. There were moments I loved you deeply. Moments I watched you fall asleep and felt safe. Moments I believed our life was enough. But love without attention becomes starvation, and I was starving in silence. I needed you to ask, to notice, to see me, and you never did. So now I'm learning how to see myself, to feed myself, to sit in a room alone and still feel whole. This letter isn't an invitation. It's a farewell. Not a bitter one, just one wrapped in grace, because I don't hate you. I just can't return to a life where I vanish again. So this is me, signing off as the woman you never fully met. The one who finally met herself. I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, tucked it into the back of my journal. I never sent it, because some truths aren't meant to change someone else. They're meant to set you free. Part 9, I'm not afraid of the mirror anymore. There was a time I couldn't look at my own reflection without adjusting something. My posture, my smile, my expectations. I used to stare into the mirror and search for the girl I used to be, the one with bright eyes and endless hope. And when I couldn't find her, I'd blame time or gravity or age. But I never blamed silence, never blamed sacrifice, never blamed how much of myself I had handed over just to keep the peace. Until one morning, standing in front of the mirror after a long walk by the sea, I saw her. Not the girl I used to be, but the woman I had become. Older, yes, softer in places, but stronger in the eyes. Quieter in a way that wasn't submission, but power. And I didn't flinch. I didn't suck in my stomach. I didn't turn away. I smiled. Because for the first time, I wasn't seeing a woman who had been left behind. I was seeing a woman who had walked away on purpose. I brushed my hair slowly, not to be beautiful, but to be gentle with myself. I put on lipstick, not because anyone would see it, but because it made me feel like I was celebrating my own presence. And I whispered something that I had waited a lifetime to hear. You are allowed to take up space. You don't owe your softness to anyone. You're not broken, you're blooming. This wasn't confidence. It was clarity. A woman who had made peace with her past, her body, her worth. Part 10, the peace I never knew I was allowed to have. It didn't come like a thunderclap. It didn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It came slowly, like a tide returning to shore. Peace. The kind I didn't even know I was allowed to feel. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of needing to be anything other than myself. I used to believe peace came when everything was in order, when the bills were paid, when everyone was happy, when no one was angry. But that kind of peace is conditional, fragile, dependent on the world behaving. This peace, it didn't care what the world did. It only asked me to stop running, to stop begging, to stop apologizing for existing, to stop shrinking so others could be comfortable. I found it in morning tea, in bare feet on cool wooden floors, in the simple ritual of choosing what I wanted to eat, without checking what someone else preferred first. I found it in saying no without explanation. I found it in letting go of the version of me who thought love had to be earned through sacrifice. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I've forgotten something, some task, some obligation, but then I remember I'm not behind, I'm not late, I'm just here, and that is enough.